Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and our guest today is political commentator on Pod TV, Steve Rao, who is also a successful politician, and we would like to have his view of what's happening because I'm getting in the morning. I'm always getting the latest news from Ukraine and what's really going on there. Right now, Russia is under fire from Ukrainian drones attacks, and they are successfully using very sophisticated English-made drones. And very soon, Moscow and all Russia will be without any electric power, and the only thing what they will see at night is fires, more fires, and yet another fires. What's your view, Steve?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I'm a little bit disheveled today. Don't have my tie and my thing. I'm stuck. But I think I'm hearing the same things from my intel sources that the continued drone attacks, both sides hitting the other. I think that we are hearing from Zelensky that he believes that he needs more funding for Patriot missiles and defense deterrence systems. So I think this is going to be interesting to see what Europe can do, what the United States can do. Of course, the question we've always had, Sasha, is, can the United States manage the resources of both these conflicts going on simultaneously? I think that's definitely a concern because while we're talking Ukraine on the show, now we have Iran war going on, and China, clamping down, saying, "Look, we need to work this out. You're approaching this all wrong with Iran." Scott Bessent, I think, doesn't get it. The Treasury Secretary, that he keeps emphasizing that Iran's oil is 70% of their they depend on foreign oil. But what he doesn't understand is they've had a much better success diversifying their energy sources than the United States and many other countries, and they haven't fired a missile either. So we're seeing, but anyway, that's my input at a high level. I mean, I think that both these wars are affecting a lot of us around the world, and but I mean, this is the Ukraine show, so we're hoping
Um,
for a resolution.
Fair enough, Steve. These wars are interconnected, and actually, China has been quite open to talking to US about that they have a huge deficiencies in the missiles what they need to fight, and therefore China is taking a very belligerent approach to United States. And by the way, many other countries, if you look at the globe and see relationships between United States vis-a-vis all other countries, it's extremely unsatisfactory, say the least. And by the way, the latest in that direction, what's happened is that Trump was trying to get together with Chairman Xi and also Prime Minister of South Korea. And what's happened now is that two of them agreed to meet, and Trump is not invited there.
Right.
They will do their business without Trump. And that applies to many, many countries that are dissatisfied with the obnoxious, super aggressive politics of the United States. And so far, it's not yielding any positive results anywhere. It's bankrupting America, and that's all what's happened, really. So Ukraine, as a matter of fact, it's not talking to the United States. There is nothing to discuss because the United States doesn't have interceptors that they need for their Patriot missiles systems. And all the rest they do sell to Europeans, and Europeans deliver it to Ukrainians. So there's nothing really to discuss. So Trump is now sending their envoys, usual stuff, Witkoff and Kushner. I don't know whether they're flying first to Moscow and then Kiev, or Kiev and then Moscow. I lost track, and I don't understand what is their role. Who exactly are they? Are they appointees of U.S. government? What is their title? What are they about to discuss? Do you have any ideas?
Between what governments? I couldn't hear you. Between what governments?
I ask if you're aware that Steve Witko and Gerald Kushner represent U.S.
Oh,
government, or anybody
yeah,
else for that matter.
yeah. I don't know. That's interesting, Sasha. I'm not really familiar. I don't know really what they're going to be discussing, but it does concern me that this is once again. I don't think foreign policy should be dictated by families and son-in-laws and the brothers of son-in-laws. I mean, I just I just think this is a very dangerous road that we are going down, and I think it's important that the American people and the world are making sure that there's full transparency and what's being discussed. And I don't like these backroom deals, but this is Trump's the new normal for this administration. We can't expect anything different.
Yeah. Well, the situation it's even unclear whom you should talk if you want to talk to the United States. Are you going to talk to Trump, to cabinet, to Kushner, to Witkoff, to Melanie? Maybe I even don't know. There is no structure. There is no purpose, and it just hopefully it will be all end with a midterm election in about
I
two
mean,
months.
yes, exactly. And I mean, I think, at the end of the day, we're going to get back to the details here, but, normally presidential administrations have a cabinet because you want to seek guidance from the cabinet that has expertise to fill out areas where you don't have expertise. So even within the State Department, I think the way this president, there's a lot of people within the State Department that have experience on Ukraine, on Russia, looking at this, people across all of the Secretary of State, Rubio, but this president will listen to his own opinion and basically manages from the top down, saying it's my way or the highway. And I think this is what's created frustration, probably that we don't hear about much from. We do hear this from Admiral William McRaven, who was the commander of the Navy SEALs, very well respected in the military. And he's been saying that he doesn't believe that Trump is taking the advice of his military advisors and generals very seriously, particularly with the war in Iran, how that's being handled. So I hope that eventually we can see a shift in strategy. Maybe he'll learn something after the midterms. I do believe we are going to have to watch those midterms. We don't know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, some of the Democratic Socialists are winning these primaries, 13 incumbents now losing, which is unheard of. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens there because they may lose the general election against the Republicans. So, the Democrats may not take back the House. And that I think is going to be very, very demoralizing for the Democratic Party.
Well, but don't you think that the mere fact that they're winning election with socialist agenda tells a lot about American voters? Maybe that's what they need after they had populist Trump for 2 terms. Maybe now they want to try something radical in a different direction.
I mean, typically in America, yes. I mean, typically in American politics, the party that is the opposing party of the person in the White House will win the midterms. So it's very common for the Democrats to win the midterms anyway, and opposite from the party of the White House, the Republicans. So yeah, you could be onto something. I think a lot of the revolution we're seeing is because of all the things Trump is doing and the dissatisfaction home. Maybe what the Democrats have to do, I think what's happening is they're being labeled as democratic socialists, but I think if they can talk about the issues of housing, of energy, of costs, inflation, gas prices, make the connection between a foreign policy that's actually got us in the two wars, which are leading to a lot of the supply chain disruptions, the energy problems, that we're not focusing enough on home. Um, I think that could be the strategy. But unfortunately, politics labels often work in politics. This whole notion of democratic socialist, rather than saying, look, we're just talking about the issues that we think matter to the American people. And I think that's going to be kind of the interesting path forward.
Steve, I'm afraid that whoever will try to play an economic issue is going to be a loser. There is no escape from where America is economically. There will be mortgages higher and higher percentages, and there will be less jobs available, and the standard of living will go much lower because of the car loan interest. It's just anything. All prices will go higher for
Yeah.
obvious reasons. So the best policy, in my opinion, for Democrats to put everything on the Republicans. That's what their policy led to country. That's why we are all suffering. This is why we have to get you away from a White House as much as possible. That's a winning message.
Yeah, and I think also, and I always come back to this because it's kind of like my theory I based on David M. Walker. But you look at a superpower being evaluated by the economic power, the political power, the diplomatic power, and then you look at all three fronts. The United States of America is really challenged today. I mean, just yesterday it was announced in The Economist, and David M. Walker. We talked about this on Economics Monday. I find it very timely that the debt in the United States, the federal deficit, is now $40 trillion. So they're looking at buying back some government bonds to reduce the payments on the debt. But I think economically, you have this kind of debt, and then you're overextending with the wars. And I think this is going to be a challenge for you. And then at home, we're suffering economically, just like the Russian people are suffering economically. I think diplomatic power, I think right now, nobody's looking at the United States as a diplomatic power. And the military superiority, we are the strongest military in the world, but China is really building lots of Navy ships, focusing on their AI capabilities, and we're feeling the effect of that in wars. We're feeling that in the effects home here in jobs and economic security. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see. But I think that's, on this show, I think it's very important at a macro level to look at how these conflicts are interconnected. And what I'm curious to you, I have a question for you. I mean, Russia has been saying now that they're willing to talk with Ukraine, but it depends on what's going on the ground. What does that really mean? Or, I mean, is Russia losing and they're just playing poker to act like that? That's confusing to me. And also the economic sanctions, if the United States does sanctions against Russia, how does that affect our relationship with China? Because these sanctions will be forced globally. So I think that's interesting to kind of see.
Well, the way I see it, Russia is playing that this is a territorial war, and whoever got more territories will get more advantages in all this peace negotiations and so on. So this is why Russia is getting desperate to grab as much more territories as possible, losing 1,500 people a day every day, and they keep this meat attacks, and that's what they really mean to see what's on the ground. But this is very misleading situation, because while on the ground, Russia, let's see, they're taking some territory, they're losing some territory, so it's neither here nor there. But on overall damage inflicted by Ukrainians to Russian cities, most of all, this refineries as the electric power systems grid, and so on. This is a very, very, very powerful point to which, if any negotiations will happen, well, it's all wars end in negotiation and some kind of a settlement, except possibly Second World War. There were no negotiations, no settlements of any kind. It was complete capitulation. It's very difficult to see any capitulation coming either from Ukraine or Russia. So therefore, both sides, it reminds me now the end of First World War, where Germany, although it was never invaded by Allied powers, but they just didn't have anything to fight with. They got exhausted and they just couldn't continue the fight, and they lost the war. It seems to me that Russia will be in the same situation. Okay, they will have all this 17 million square kilometers Russian territory intact and so on, but they will not be able to continue fight. That's, I think, what will happen. And
what do you think? I mean, what do you think the path to peace is? Do you think it's going to be more? Would it be more likely for peace if a new United States president is elected, or do you believe that there's a path to peace if Zelensky can work it out with the United States and Europe on security guarantees? Because I think we can agree that lives are being lost on both sides, and we want to continue to pray for Ukraine. There's a lot of families here in North Carolina, Ukrainian immigrants. Independence Day is coming up on the 24th. There'll be some celebrations here. We'll probably have a special edition that week. What are your thoughts? I mean, I think it's in the best interest of Trump to have peace, because then he can politically say, look, I brought the end to the war, largest war since World War II in Europe. But the reality is, when I read what's going on, I just don't know whether this is going to continue to drag out for another year or two.
I'd like to mention something that I don't understand why Trump, in the first place, and especially now, is so much. I don't think he's interested to end the war, but he keeps proclaiming that he's interested to finish the war. Because I don't understand why the hell he is interested to end the war, where U.S. is selling all weapons to Europeans, who are then supplying them to Ukrainians. So the contractors for U.S. weapons are making huge money. The employment on these factories is great. So what's the benefit for Trump or the United States of America to have peace there? I just don't get it. Maybe you see something.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the best interest, I think, of the United States of America from a country perspective. When I talk about, this is the first time where national security, when we talk about what's going on within the borders of our country, is being affected by global wars. So Ukraine and Iran, what makes these conflicts similar is that both are affecting the global economy. Food supplies with the bombing of agricultural distilleries, energy with the bombing in Iran, what's going on there. But I think that the longer that these wars go on, I think it's going to dwindle or affect the resources the United States has, number one. And this is going to be frustrating the people of our country. Now, when Trump ran for the second term, he said he was going to end all these wars. Right? And here we are. He invaded Venezuela. We don't know what the transition strategy there is, not very clear. He's bombing Iran, invaded Iran. And I think a lot of that's been done by pressure from Israel. I think that's what this is really about. We don't talk a lot about that, but I think there's a lot going on there behind the scene. And then, of course, while this is all going on, we've got the war in Ukraine. So all of these conflicts, I just don't see how it's in the long-term interest of the United States, how it's a long-term interest of the world. We've got Syria. I think the other thing, we're talking a lot about the Middle East today, but I think all of this also affects the United States foreign policy in the Middle East. Because if you look at China, China hasn't fired a missile in the war. They've got good relationships with Russia. They've got good relationships with the United Arab Emirates. They've got good relationships with Iran and Iraq. So a post-Iran war is now making these alliances weaker for the United States of America, which is going to create a more unstable Middle East, which is going to affect even our energy strategy as well. And meanwhile, China has diversified their economy. I mean, they're looking at nuclear, coal, natural gas. They're not so scared about the United States and what we're doing. So I think these are all interconnected. And
Yes, I agree with you, Steve. But look, if you take still in Russian-Ukrainian war, United States has no stake and cannot affect the peace or whatever other negotiations might be. It has certain role. Maybe a year ago, it lost it since because it was ineffective. It was not acting in good faith by sending Kushner and what's his name, Vitkov to Russia several times, I think as many as 7 times. So United States lost credibility in that theater. Now, a very different situation is with Iran because US is directly involved in that war. So if they cannot finish the war in Iran, how they can ever finish war in Ukraine when they're not involved? You tell me.
that's exactly my point. And I just don't see, how this can change. And I just, it's just crazy um, how we've gotten to this point. And I really think that these next few weeks, I think, are going to be very telling in the United States of America. What happens in the midterm elections? Will the Democrats take over the House? If they do, perhaps you're right. The democratic socialism might have been the move in the right direction. But long term, will that move the Democratic Party more to the left with someone like an Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, who continues to rise in the polls, be the presumptive nominee for the presidency of the United States, which I think could bode very significant dangers for the ability of the Democrats to win the White House. Let's remember that presidency is not based on the popular vote. It's based on the electoral map, the path to 270. And I don't think that a 36-year-old congresswoman, she's charismatic, very smart. I mean, I commend her political genius, but it's going to be tough, right? So I think that's where we have to kind of look at, because I think the world is watching. We have to change the presidency of the United States if we're going to see the direction change, unless JD Vance or Rubio are going to just shift policy.
Steve, but still, I don't get one thing right. If she commands people's attention and they like what she's presenting and the way she presents, and
Right.
so are other progressives.
Right.
So don't you think that the party sort of shifts a little bit to the left? And if that's the case, how you can fight it?
Typically, you've seen that in the past. I mean, I think it's important also as an analyst to look at historical patterns. So when we've seen the Democratic Party shift to the left, the two that come to mind is Michael, and this was in a different time when the Democratic progressives today are much farther to the left than, for example, the governor of Massachusetts, former Governor Michael Dukakis, who ran against George H.W. Bush at Bush 41. And he lost significantly, right? Then you look at John Kerry, who ran against George Bush in the second term, and he lost handily. So in both those cases, the reason is that when you look at most of the United States as rural, it's not urban. So the left-wing Democrats are going to do better in the urban areas like California states, like Chicago, like Washington, but in these purple states that are more rural, like North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, the Midwest, these were the Democrats, and a lot of it is these social issues may not matter as much on LGBTQ, transgender, some of those things. So I think maybe if they can find the right candidate, that can talk about it. But typically, the extreme left hasn't won. Maybe you have to look back to John F. Kennedy beating Richard M. Nixon in 1961. That was a call for a new generation, a new frontier. Lyndon Johnson winning, and of course Barack Obama winning. So maybe AOC or whoever is the more left-wing Democrat. But Obama was a generational shift, very unique, his communication skills. So, I think it could be a combination. Maybe you put AOC on the ticket and you run a Bashir Cortez ticket or whatever. So it's going to be interesting to see the combinations here. But the president of the United States is very different. I think people don't understand it's on the electoral map, the path to 270, not the popular vote.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you, Steve. And I would like to thank you very much for today's program.
Yeah, we'll come back next week. I'm going to thank you, and we're going to talk about Ukraine and Iran, continue to shift. Sasha, thank you for your patience today. I hope I passed the test with being a decent analyst. I'm working on my homework and being prepared for these shows. Hopefully it's showing to the viewers, but thank you, and I'll see you on Tuesday. And Slava Ukraine. Thank you.
Yes, Geroim Slava. And we'll see you Tuesday, same place, same time. And have a great weekend, all our listeners. Bye-bye, everybody.